Okay, picture this. The date is April 2nd, 2026. We're in the Malda district of West Bengal. A national highway is completely blocked by barricades of burning tires and furniture. A crowd of hundreds has gathered.
But that's not all. Inside a local office, things are way more tense. For 9 straight hours, 7 judicial officers are literally being held hostage. They can't leave. And when the police finally show up, they're greeted with a shower of stones.
So, who are these people holding judges hostage? Professional criminals? Nope, they're teachers, farmers, and local shopkeepers. We're talking about ordinary folks with zero criminal records who've been pushed to do something this desperate. So, the real question is, why? Well, their story, it pulls back the curtain on a crisis that is shaking the very foundations of democracy in the state. And this crisis isn't being driven by politicians in the usual sense, but by an algorithm. This is what's going on inside the West Bengal voter deletion crisis. So, where did all this start? It all kicked off back in November 2025 with something that sounds pretty boring, a Special Intensive Revision, or SIR. The official goal was just to, clean up the voter rolls. But what it actually did was ignite a political firestorm on a scale nobody had ever seen before. Just try to wrap your head around these numbers. In total, 1.21 crore, that's 12.1 million people were affected by this. To put that in perspective, that is 1 out of every 6 voters in the entire state. Yeah, 1 in 6.
And it gets worse. Of that massive number, 61 lakh, that's 6.1 million people, had their names completely wiped off the voter list. Poof, just like that, their right to vote was gone. But it doesn't stop there. Another 60 lakh, or 6 million voters, were shuffled into this brand new, totally unheard of category called a suspected voter. This left them in a kind of electoral limbo. Not deleted, but not exactly confirmed either.
So you have to ask, what on earth was the official reason for such a massive, chaotic exercise? Well, the stated goal was simple, and it's a political talking point we've heard for years: getting illegal immigrants off the voter rolls. In fact, leaders at the time were very open about it. They said the whole point was to delete over 1 crore, that's 10 million, illegal Bangladeshi migrants from the voter lists. That was the public story. Anyway. But here's the thing. The data tells a completely different story. If the goal was really to target illegal migration, you'd expect the Muslim-majority areas near the border to be hit the hardest, right? Well, they weren't. The average rate of unmapped voters there was tiny, just 0.6%. Instead, the highest rates, almost 9.5%, which is double the state average, were in areas dominated by Hindu refugees from Bangladesh. The data just doesn't line up with the official story. So, if the justification seems a little shaky, then how did this all actually happen? Well, this wasn't some manual door-to-door process. The whole thing was driven by a single piece of software. And it was this software that created that weird suspected voter category we just talked about. It was designed to flag people with, and I'm quoting here, logical discrepancies. Get this. This category had never existed in any voter revision since 1952. It was a brand new tool for a brand new process. So what kind of huge discrepancies could land you on this list? Oh, you're not going to believe this. A tiny spelling mistake in your name. Or maybe the software decided the age gap between you and your parents was too small or too big. Yeah, simple clerical errors, the kind that are super common in Indian documents, were enough to put your right to vote in jeopardy. And here is the absolute kicker. This software, the one deciding the fate of millions of voters, was never properly tested before they rolled it out. A senior election commission official literally admitted they had no idea what its accuracy rate was. Was it 60% accurate, 95%? They were completely flying blind. And that lack of testing, it had terrifying consequences. On the night of March 24th, they ran the software on the state database, and it instantly flagged nearly 7 crore, 70 million voters as suspected. That's basically everyone in the state. 2 hours later, officials just called it a technical glitch and rolled it back. A chilling preview of just how unstable this thing was. Look, this wasn't just some tech problem. The software's errors had a massive human cost. And this wasn't an issue that only affected the poor or people who couldn't read or write. Absolutely no one was immune. I mean, the list of people who got flagged is just staggering. A Kargil war veteran, marked suspected. A retired high court judge? His name was completely deleted. A World Cup winning cricketer? Thrown onto the suspected list. And in a twist that is almost too perfect, even the booth-level officers, the very people in charge of the voter rolls, found themselves flagged as suspected by the algorithm they were supposed to be using. So, when you have a system this flawed, with results that are this skewed, it's pretty much inevitable that people are going to start crying foul, right? The chaos very quickly turned into a blame game, with accusations of political manipulation. And these accusations, they flew in both directions. On one hand, the ruling state party pointed out that 42% of all these suspected cases were packed into just 3 districts where they had won by razor-thin margins. And on the other hand, the opposition party was accused of illegally adding thousands of voters from other states using these bulk applications, which is a big no-no. And the potential to swing elections here was just massive. Get this, in a mind-boggling 234 out of 294 constituencies, the number of voters affected was bigger than the winning margin from the last election. The power to just completely flip results was enormous. Now, I know this all happened in West Bengal, but the implications of this go way beyond just one state. This whole crisis brings up some really fundamental questions about how secure our democratic rights are. And that affects every single one of us. And what made the whole situation feel even worse were the accusations that this was all being hidden on purpose. The Election Commission was accused of making the data nearly impossible for anyone to analyze. They released it as these huge, non-searchable, watermarked PDF files. It's a format that seems specifically designed to keep people from looking too closely. So, for the people caught in the middle of this, what can actually be done? Well, for those in West Bengal, there is a way to fight back, even if it's tough. First step is to check your name on the Election Commission's website. If you're on the list, you can file an appeal online, and you should also submit a physical paper appeal at your local government office to make sure your case gets heard.
So, at the end of the day, it all boils down to this. The West Bengal crisis was apparently driven by an untested algorithm and orders given out over WhatsApp. And if that's really all it takes to disenfranchise millions of citizens, it forces every single one of us to ask a pretty scary question. Is anyone's fundamental right to choose their leaders truly secure?